today it's Thanksgiving week. So we're here on a Wednesday to talk about Kristi Noem, Erika Kirk, Bill McKibben talking about...
Nothing makes you give thanks like Erika Kirk and Kristi Noem, right?
Erika Kirk was, of course, in the news a couple of weeks ago when she hugged JD Vance on stage at a TPUSA event at the University of Mississippi. The hug went viral. We talked about it on this show. It's one of the few times on the show I did feel a little bit like I'm not sure I went to graduate school to talk about a hug between Erika Kirk and JD Vance, but I'm going to do it anyway. Let me play a clip here of what Erika Kirk has said about all of the hubbub surrounding her very handsy, face-touching, arm around the waist hug with JD Vance minutes before JD Vance said, I really hope my current wife, Usha Vance, converts to Christianity. Wouldn't that be great? Here's what she said.
Forgive me. Did you see people didn't understand the hug that you and JD had? They went to the weirdest places, Erika.
Oh, you guys, please, I will give you a free hug anytime you want a hug. My love language is touch, if you will. So I will give you a play-by-play. Like walking, they just played the emotional video. I'm walking over, he's walking over, I'm starting to cry. He says, he's so proud of you. And I say, God bless you. And I touch the back of his head. Anyone who I've hugged that I have touched the back of your head when I hug you, I always say, God bless you. That's just me. If you want to take that out of context, go right ahead. Again, that to me shows that you need a hug more than anyone else. So if anyone...
They were acting like you touched the back of his ass.
I feel like I wouldn't get as much hate if I did that versus... But no, seriously, so now when I go and hug people, I'll bring them back in and be like, I obviously didn't give you the right hug. Come, let me touch the back of your head.
Go?
I don't know what to do with my...
All right, Dan, when I saw you in Boston, we did hug. There was no leather pants. There was no, arms around the waist. I'm sorry if that disappointed you as in terms of how hugs go. I apparently am not a love language as touch person because I just don't hug that way normally, whether it's you or really anyone outside of my wife probably, but that's just me. Take it away, Dan. What do you want to say about Erika Kirk and her explanation of love languages and grabbing the vice president's frothy beard on stage?
So I was disappointed that you didn't gently place your hand on the side of my face, Brad, but I've learned to live with disappointment. So one thing, everybody knows, we've talked about it, everybody's known, right? Real speculation. I think it's real speculation about whether or not, essentially this is like the preview of a move for, Erika Kirk as FLOTUS, as First Lady. So you have TPUSA and Erika Kirk now is the head of TPUSA saying that it's in the works to support Vance for 2028. And there was already all this talk, and I think it's real. I want to be clear. I think this is real. I'm not making a call or anything. I'm not promising this will happen, but JD Vance is leaning in heavily to that super right-wing young male demographic within the GOP, the Eric Kirk wing of that, Charlie Kirk, Erika Kirk and Charlie are mixing up in my head. The Charlie Kirk wing, we talked about that same event in Mississippi in the way that, he fields questions that are clearly anti-Semitic and doesn't make any distinction about that, doesn't push back on that at all. So it's going to be a liability that he has a woman of color who is his wife, that he has children who don't look white to most people, that she's not a Christian, all of that stuff. And so there's this speculation about whether or not sometimes there's essentially going to be, the JD Vance wife swap that goes on, and he's going to, there'll be some announcement or something. We can talk if we want to. I've had people ask and say, well, how do you think they would swing that? I've got some thoughts. But I want to point out, we were just at a conference with a bunch of academics, right? Not a bunch of radical conspiracists, people who are smart, people who look at things. They don't all look at politics week in and week out like you and I do. But I was asked numerous times by other academics, I've got this thought that this is a thing that JD Vance might do. What do you think? And the point is that it's a real thing, right? Erika Kirk did nothing to shoot that down in this. She did not say just, she talked more about it, but she didn't just say he was consoling me, the loss of my husband or something. I think she makes a very pointed effort to call him JD. There's the weird thing, and you can tell me if this tracks, the weird rhetorical thing was like, JD, Vice President Vance, said, whatever. And I feel like it's such a calculated, misstatement, right? I do that with colleagues, right? My friend is, it's just Mary down the hall. Then I'm like, it's Dr. Smith. That's who that is. But it feels really calculated when she does it. Anyway, there's a lot there. And I think that this stuff with Megyn Kelly didn't dispel it. I don't think it was intended to dispel it. If nothing else, if you're Erika Kirk, you're getting more clicks, you're getting more listens, you're getting more attention, because she and JD Vance both are trying to ride the TPUSA wave as long as they can. Neither of them are Charlie Kirk. And so we'll see where that is in 6 months or a year. But I think it's a real thing. And I think this did nothing to sort of quiet that. And I think it's worth speculating, because it would be a huge boost to JD Vance if he was partnered with Erika Kirk. It would be a huge boost to that demographic.
The reason I know that her calling him JD is a big deal, and again, I never thought I'd go to grad school and be like, oh, let's analyze her, Erika Kirk, calling JD Vance JD. But here's how I know it's a big deal to JD, the Vice President Vance, I mean, is that he had this whole thing where he was making up like a dialogue, at least making up in my mind, where he's, oh yeah, I was talking to Pete Hegseth, and he said to me, okay, Mr. Vice President. And I was thinking, like, really? So when you and Pete talk, he calls you that? Is that just like, even when you're just like texting and you're being like bros?
It's not even just he said blah, 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 blah. He has to put the title in there to foreground that this is how people talk to me.
JD Vance is certainly somebody who, if you don't call him Mr. Vice President, there's trouble. So I know this is a big deal for her to call him JD. That's a point I'd like to make. You know, I don't want to spend all day on this, but I will say that my friend Matt, who's a really devoted listener to this show and somebody I've talked to throughout the years, is also an academic, is also somebody who I really respect. I had this great post on social media the other day that said, Erika Kirk is running for First Lady. And I think Erika Kirk might be the first person in U.S. history to run for First Lady. I mean, she is basically making a case there to be, the First Lady. Now, I think that two things are really possible here. And one of them has to take place for JD Vance to be a viable presidential candidate. It's either Usha Vance becomes a Christian, which I've talked about. And since I floated that idea on this show, many people have written me to say it's not going to happen. And those could be folks who are South Asian and have a sort of insight into the culture and caste and other things that Usha Vance comes from. Those are just listeners who are like, no, I don't think so. So I think that is just one possibility. And if JD Vance wants to be president, I think that has to happen. There's no way the ethno-nationalist, racist, Nick Fuentes sympathizing MAGA young bro dudes are, and by young, I mean under 45, are going to support a man who has a Hindu wife or comes from a Hindu family. She may not identify as Hindu. They're not going to care. Or they split. He plays the victim. She wouldn't come to Christ. She wouldn't believe in the one true Savior. She wouldn't fully assimilate to the United States. Therefore, I had to marry this grieving widow who loves Jesus and is an evangelical, right? And Dan's camera is going absolutely off the walls. That's all right. Go ahead.
Off the walls. I'm going to try to fix that. In the meantime, they can't be unequally yoked, Brad. I've had people ask me, they're like, so how do you go about doing that? How do you square the circle? The people who still seem to think that somehow or another the ethics matter here, that this is still like classical evangelicalism. You can't be divorced. You can't have, you can't be remarried, etc. That's how. You couldn't be unequally yoked. There's a passage in the New Testament not being, and that's where the victim card will come. I did everything I could, Brad. Yeah, I tried. I pled with her. I shared the gospel. I did all of that. She wouldn't do it. We couldn't be unequally yoked. Can't do that to America, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
And he wasn't a Christian when they got together. So there's a way, you and I think know how this goes, where it's like he was not a Christian when they married and when they met. He was received into the Catholic Church in 2019. So the story can also just be, well, when we met, I was not with the Lord in the church, but now I am. There will be complications just because of the Catholic Church and divorce and the way that works, and that will be tricky for him. But I just want to remind everybody that JD Vance has been willing to criticize the U.S. Conference of Bishops and the Pope openly. So, this is not somebody who I think is scared of the Catholic hierarchy or to challenge the conventional marriage doctrines and procedures within the church. So I think that's just a way to put that. All right. Any last words on that, Dan, or should we go to Christino?
No, I think that's the big thing. And again, people will still wonder about the rationale. If we know anything about the brand of conservative Christianity, the brand of conservative Catholicism that the JD Vance espouses, you'll find the reason, right? You do what you're going to do, and then you'll generate the theological rationale for it. But yeah, this does nothing to like silence the people who think that this is a real thing, perhaps in the works, to use the words of Erika Kirk.